Yes. So, a brief background on Turkey. Turkey is a parliamentary secular republic. So that means a republic. It has a parliament, it's secular, there is a separation between religion and state, and it is a republic, so with a president. It has 77 million people, and it looks to be, from a religious perspective, very homogeneous. So 99.8% of the population adheres to the Islam. And within the Islam, they are the largest majority is Sunni Muslims. As you may or may not know, Muslims can be widely, very crudely divided into Sunni and Shia Muslims. Sunni are the large majority, almost 85% of all the Muslims in the world adhere to Sunni Muslims. And to put it crudely, the difference between Sunni and Shia is that Shia believe that the leader of the Muslim society should have direct blood relation with Muhammad, the Prophet, and Sunni believe that actually the people can choose who can be their religious leader. So in Turkey, 99.8% adhere to the Sunni Islam. That is very homogeneous, but if you look at the ethnic background of people in Turkey, they are more diverse. 70% of the people in Turkey are called Turkmen, so they are Turkish. 18% are Kurds, and 12% have a different background. For example, Christian and some other minor. So, for example, Armenians and Christians are two major groups within that 12%. The total GDP ranks 17th in the world, and the GDP per head is 10,000. The nominal GDP per head is 10,000, about 10,500 US dollars. The Gini coefficient is an indicator of how even income is distributed. The Gini coefficient is medium relative to other distributions in the world, and their main industries are automotive, shipbuilding, and tourism. Okay, so Japan has a lot of ties with Turkey. Quite a few projects are being done by Japanese companies. One of the most famous one is a tunnel under the Bosphorus, where lots of Japanese involvement, a lot of engineers, but also money from the Japanese government was put into this project. The Republic of Turkey was founded, or the father of Turkey is commonly seen to be Kemal Atatürk. That's not his real name. Atatürk actually means the father of Turkey. He founded Turkey in 1923. So Turkey, it has a very strategic location here. It's this is the Bosphorus. You cannot see it. It's a very tiny canal that connects the Black Sea with the Mediterranean. It's connected with Europe, as well as the Middle East, as well as here the Far East. So they have a very important strategic location and connecting many different cultures. It was founded in 1923 after World War I ended. In World War I, the then still called Ottoman Empire sided with Germany and Italy, and they lost the war, and it was a period of great turbulence. Kemal Atatürk was the leader, a military leader, who fought against the Allied forces who occupied Turkey at that time, and re-established a territory for the Turks, which is modern Turkey. He was a moderate person. He gave voting rights, equal voting rights to women. He established many schools, and he's still revered up until today. But if you want to know more about Turkey, you have to go much further back. This is a map of the Ottoman Empire, the origin of Turkey, around 1683. So this was the peak, the height of the power of the Ottoman Empire, and as you can see, it stretched into Europe, all around the Black Sea, a large part of the Arabic Peninsula and North Africa. They were very, very influential, and in the Ottoman Empire, how could they control such a large region? Because they didn't really have communication means and things like that. But actually, the Ottoman Empire was an empire where a lot of different tribes with different ethnic backgrounds and political ideas could have some kind of self-rule. So they were more or less autonomous. Christians could rule themselves. Muslims, of course, could rule themselves, but also Berber and other groups, Bedouins, they could all have some kind of self-rule. That doesn't mean that they were at equal footing with the rulers, the Ottomans, but they were relatively well off, and it could go as far as that they could levy their own taxes and have their own law that they adhered to. So that is part of the success of the Ottoman Empire, and if you want to understand people like Erdogan, then you also need to understand this background, this Ottoman idea. I already mentioned the difference between Sunni and Shia. Another thing that you need to understand about the Middle East is the difference between Sunni and Shia, and if you know a little bit about who lives where, you can also kind of get an appreciation of the difficult situation that the Middle East is in. So the black countries are dominated by Shia Muslims. So Iran and Iraq have a majority of Shia Muslims, whereas Iran has a very large majority, like more than 90%, and Iraq it's about between 60 and 70%. And Bahrain also has a majority of Shia Muslims. Other countries have minorities and sometimes significant minorities. For example, in Saudi Arabia, there is a Shia minority, but it's still significant. In North Africa, there are only a few Shia Muslims. So Turkey has been trying, after they modernized their state under Kemal Atatürk, they have been trying to after the defeat, rebuild the country, and they have been growing gradually. The President Erdogan came to power when Turkey was not doing very well. They had a period of economic decline, a lot of problems with debt, and when Erdogan came to power, his economic success was enormous. He turned around the country. He managed to let the country get rid of their debt, but he was also a very strict ruler. Erdogan has been had very strong ties with the Sunni Muslims, He himself is a Sunni Muslim, and he had two of his parties that he founded prohibited because those parties were against the secular principles of Turkey. So there was a too strong relationship between Islam and the ruling of the country. Turkey, as you saw, is actually, geographically speaking, in the middle between the Middle East and Europe. And they have been trying to become a member of the European Union. And this failed. It was rejected because a majority of the members of the European Union thought that Turkey did not do enough in terms of human rights, and they had too strong of a connection with religion, the Islam. And there was the matter of okay, how far can we go as a European Union integrating countries that have a different economic speed? Do countries like Germany belong to the same economic league as Turkey? So there was also a doubt, okay, how far can Europe actually grow? So after Turkey was rejected, they also they kind of like were disappointed, and they shifted their focus away from Europe into the Middle East. And Erdogan started to do more and more to make himself seen as one of the leaders who could make a difference in the Middle East. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to get friends. So their policy was zero problems with neighbors. So they tried to become a mediator. So, for example, they voted against the sanctions in Iran, which didn't make them very popular in the Security Council. But in the Middle East, that was seen as a very good move. Actually, it is rather interesting because Iran, as you may remember from a previous map, is a Shia country, whereas Erdogan is a Sunni Muslim. They provided, or they have very strong involvement with humanitarian aid in Gaza, the Palestinians. Actually, two ships left from Turkey, who went to Gaza to provide medical aid to Palestinians, but the ship was entered by Israeli special forces, and people were killed on that ship, and that led to a very, very big conflict. And Erdogan took a very strong stance in this conflict. Also, they established ties with Iraqi Kurdistan, so with Kurds in Iraq, which the relationship between Kurds and Turks, as you may know, is very difficult. There is a 18% minority of Kurds living in Turkey, and the PKK, the Kurdish liberation movement, has been responsible for many terrorist attacks in Turkey. But actually, Erdogan tried to move over that and try to get support from Kurds, and he has been actually financing a lot of projects in Kurdish areas to make sure that Kurds would catch up with the economic development in the rest of Turkey. Try to normalize ties with Armenia. Armenia, maybe you know this, but Armenia had a minority in Turkey. After World War I, or actually just before World War I, a lot of the Turks who lived in the Balkan, in Europe, were expelled from there, and they moved back to Turkey. But when they came there, they noticed that Armenians had taken their place. They had become relatively successful, and the Turks who came back wanted to claim back what they thought was their property, and they started to rise against the Armenians. There were more reasons why this conflict really got out of hand. It was also believed that since the Ottomans were under attack from Russians, that the Armenians might side with the Russians and therefore cause the Ottomans to fall. Anyway, throughout a lot of propaganda, things got really out of control and eventually led to the death of 1.5 million Armenians in what's called the world's second largest genocide in history. Islamic State is a Sunni movement, and initially Turkey was actually rather sympathetic with Islamic State. So they refused collaboration with the United States when they trying to when the United States wanted to use airfields from in Turkey to perform these attacks from the air, and they also didn't want to get involved into this war. So they just wanted to protect their borders and didn't want to fight against their fellow Arab men, as they said. But on the other hand, they did actually take in a lot of refugees. A lot of refugees from Syria moved into Turkey, but it didn't do enough, and also their sympathy for the IS was not really appreciated by quite a few other countries within the Middle East. So their international relationships are being tight. Now, I would like to show you a video from Erdogan, and this is a video that is not very popular. It has only been shown to a few people. It's a video recorded at the university, the Marmaris University, where Erdogan graduated, and this video shows the views of Erdogan as an appeal to not only people in Turkey but Muslims in general to unite. If you remember from 2 weeks ago, we talked about Sykes-Picot, and it's widely believed, and Erdogan also widely believes, that Sykes-Picot was an evil plan after World War I to divide the Middle East in such a way that it would create distrust among Muslims. The borderlines, the state borderlines, were drawn up in a way that the different groups of Muslims would be divided. So we had, for example, Iraq, where we had Kurds, we had Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims in rather large groups. It's a very unstable situation. We have Syria, where we had a minority government. Many places where we had minority governments, and all these countries who did not exist before World War I, before they were drawn up in the Sykes-Picot Agreement, came into existence and were designed to be unstable. Now, Erdogan is making an appeal. Okay, we need to unite. In a nutshell, what Erdogan is saying is that Sykes-Picot was an attempt to divide the Middle East, to create new countries and to create borders where formerly no borders existed, and create not only physical borders but also borders in the heads and the hearts of the people. Now he doesn't have, and the reason behind it, the reason was that Western powers, the powers who drew up Sykes-Picot, wanted to have access to oil. That was their intention. So they want to keep the Middle East divided and fighting among themselves in order to keep access to oil. And then he makes a parallel with the Allied forces who actually want to drop their bombs in the region. So, for example, the United States. But he asked, okay, so I'm not going to redraw. I do not trying to say that we should redraw our borders and go back to where we were in the beginning. I say we should first, or he doesn't say first, but we should take away the borders in our minds and in our hearts. So we are all Muslims, we are all brothers, and therefore, why are we fighting? Then he's making a reference to Lawrence of Arabia, who sided with the Arabs and fought against the Ottoman Empire. And we still have these kinds of Lawrences among us, people who are actually acting on the Sykes-Picot Agreement and are acting against our best interest. And this is I believe this is a reference to the people that he sees as enemies of the state. So the reason why he has been shutting down Facebook on occasions and YouTube, that's all a bigger plan. It's not. It's against the best interest of Turkey, which of course is Erdogan himself. So and then he says, okay, for this region, we are the hope. We are the answer. We have to take a leading role in this region by asking the right questions, by educating people, and that is the future. Now, if you put that in the context of the Middle East, we can indeed see that the Middle East has been plagued by lots of conflicts, and that indeed the Sykes-Picot Agreement seems to be a deliberate attempt to create borders that were not very logical in terms of the people who live there. So this is something that has been going on. Now we have IS, but what is the next step? And Erdogan I think is a very clear signal that the Middle East is trying to reevaluate, trying to reassert itself and asking itself, so how come this has been happening? And Turkey is trying to make a reference to the Ottoman Empire and say, okay, in this era, at least we were more or less united in a single empire. We were not fighting among each other. So this could be a possible answer for the Middle East. So reduce the influence of the United States and reduce the influence of Europe, and take control of your own region again. Yeah, well, if you look at Erdogan, if you see how he rants against Western powers who have only been trying to divide the Middle East, who are conspiring against the Middle East, you can really understand that Europe was not too enthusiastic to put Turkey into the European Union, the way that they are profiling themselves at the moment. And you can see this as political opportunism, but where they were first appealing to their role within the European Union, they are now appealing their role in the Middle East. Now, I'm not saying that these are their true colors, but this kind of message doesn't really come over very well in Europe, of course.
Yeah. But also, Turkey's key role to settle Middle East affairs or events or tribes, especially including ISIL. But currently, Turkey themselves not so much heavily involved in this Middle East war.
No, they don't want to fight against their fellow Muslim men, and what they have been doing is taking in many refugees, like I said before, but they do not want to take an active role in fighting and using their weapons against other Muslims in the area. Because they can also see that this is just a temporary phase. IS is not something that will sustain. It will finally crumble, and they have to play a more long-term political game. Now, I don't know whether this was supposed to be broadcasted. Actually, there was a similar video on the internet. It was taken down, supposedly for copyright infringement. Now, this one, I think this one only had 33 views, so not that many. So maybe this speech he regrets a little bit, but I think it shows his true colors. His true intentions of what his view is of Turkey and its role that it should take. Turkey doesn't support IS, but they don't want to attack IS without answering a different question. So what if we attack IS, we beat IS? What does it mean for Assad? Because they are more against Assad than they are against IS. Assad has allegiance to Iran, and Iran is a Shia country. Assad is also from a minority in Syria. So Assad is suppressing the Sunni Muslims in his country. So Turkey wants something done about Assad more than they want something done about IS. It seems like Turkey has been disappointed very much that they were not allowed entry into the EU, and they have mentioned on several occasions that basically they kind of like given up on Europe. So if they don't want us, we don't need you, and they really shifted focus. That doesn't mean that if they are not successful in establishing relationships in the Middle East that they will not swing back to Europe, because indeed they are in that situation. I don't think that the Middle East considers them to be a full member of the Middle East, not a first-rate member. Those are Saudi Arabia, Iran, for example. Those are considered to be the real leaders of the Middle East. But of course, they have their influence, they have their past in the Middle East. So yeah, they have an opportunity, and they seem to be looking for it. Whether or not they are the ones to do that, whether or not an appeal of a neo-Ottoman Empire is something that is very attractive to the Middle East, I doubt it. I don't think that the Middle East wants to go in this direction under the leadership of Turkey, not Turkey, but maybe if they can be more inclusive. Maybe if other people can put their weight behind it and say, okay, we have an opportunity here, why don't we collaborate and try to create some kind of pan-Arabic partnership and start working from there? Because the pan-Arabic partnership is something that already exists on a religious level. So Sunni and Shia Muslims are exchanging ideas, and even with the Christian church, they are exchanging ideas and exchanging all kinds of values and culture. The role of Turkey, I think, is a very interesting one, as you mentioned, as a bridge between Europe and the Middle East. How it will work out, I think also Uno-san mentioned that there are so many countries, so many people who play a role here, so many connections, that it is very dangerous to claim that it will go either this way or that way. If we take a few steps further back, then we can see that the role of oil will probably lessen, the dominance of a single country will lessen, and that will probably mean that there will be less outside interference within the Middle East, which is, I hope, an opportunity for the Middle East to reorganize and to become a prosperous region once again.